weather to driver changes, feuds to qualifying, and Tony Stewart to Kurt Busch, there were many NASCAR news headlines in 2014. Coming up on the NASCAR 5-Year in Review show, a look back at some of the major stories with original clips from NASCAR 5 episodes. Hello everyone, welcome to this Year in Review special. I'm your host Bryce Turner. First up, preseason headlines dominated by format changes. Knockout-style qualifying will be the new norm and will consist of 3 elimination rounds. The format will be in effect for NASCAR's top 3 series at every race except for the Daytona 500, Mud Summer Classic, as well as non-point events. Meanwhile, the chase will also face changes. The field will be expanded from 12 to 16 drivers who can be from within the top 30 in points. The new name for NASCAR's postseason will be the Chase Grid. There will be 3 elimination rounds and a final race where 4 drivers will have an even shot at the championship. For the All-Star race, the Sprint Showdown, a last chance race to get into the main event, will be pushed back to Friday, May 16th. The 3 drivers who advance from the Showdown will take part in time trials. All drivers will have to run 3 laps and make a mandatory pit stop. The time trials and All-Star race itself will take place as scheduled on Saturday, May 17th. Camping World has extended its title sponsorship of NASCAR's Truck Series. The RV retailer has been the title sponsor of the series since 2009 and will now continue as the title holder until 2022. As part of the deal, Camping World's Good Sam Roadside Assistance will become the official roadside assistance of NASCAR. As anticipated, NASCAR announced that Comcast Xfinity will replace Nationwide Insurance as the title sponsor of the sport's second-tier series. Nationwide had announced a while back that it would not renew its sponsorship. When Comcast Xfinity takes Nationwide's place starting next year, the series will be renamed the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Comcast is also the parent company of NBC Sports, which will broadcast select races starting next season. Meanwhile, some off-season news. Sprint will not extend its sponsorship of NASCAR's top series beyond 2016 when its current contract expires. Sprint has been a sponsor of the Cup Series, first as Nextel since 2004. Now on to qualifying news. So far, Team Penske has dominated in the new qualifying format. At Phoenix, the new format made its debut, and Brad Keselowski sat on the pole beside his Penske teammate Joey Logano. Then at Las Vegas, Logano sat on the pole with Keselowski starting second. 2 times under the new qualifying format, and 2 times where Team Penske made up the front row. 2014 Sprint Cup champion Kevin Harvick won the most poles with 8. Meanwhile, Coors Light Pole Award year-end winner Brad Keselowski is second with 5. Kyle Busch has started first 4 times, once after qualifying was rained out. Denny Hamlin and Jeff Gordon won 3 poles each in 2014. Meanwhile, there are a handful of drivers who started first on 1 or 2 occasions. Note that one of Kyle Larson's poles came after qualifying was rained out. And in other news, a new Air Titan is ready for use with another wet weekend ahead. Air Titan 2.0 features smaller units that will be driven around the track by Toyota Tundras in comparison to the larger bulky support vehicles required for its predecessor. The new Air Titan is more than 3 times the blade capacity of Air Titan 1.0, delivers 2.6 times more air volume at a speed of 568 miles an hour, and raises the air temperature by 70 degrees. The hope is that Air Titan 2.0 will reduce track drying time by 80%. The new system will consume nearly 80% less fuel and emit 80% less carbon dioxide. Rain continued to be a problem last weekend when the Cup race at Texas was postponed to Monday afternoon. This came after delays at Daytona and Bristol for the Cup Series, a rain-shortened nationwide event at Phoenix, and a postponed truck outing in Martinsville. After a wet start to the season, there weren't as many weather issues throughout the remainder of the year. But with that said, there were still some races affected by weather, including the Cup race at Daytona in July, which was postponed and shortened due to rain. A piece of metal may be the reason behind vision troubles for Denny Hamlin, which sidelined him last weekend. Sam Hornish Jr. was a last-minute replacement for Hamlin on Sunday, when Denny was not clear to race due to vision troubles. The troubles were thought to be the result of a sinus infection, but in a local hospital in Fontana, a small piece of metal was found in Hamlin's eye. Once doctors removed the metal, Hamlin's condition improved. Denny will be back behind the wheel of the number 11 JGR Toyota, looking to make up ground this weekend at Martinsville. First up in the news, Swan Racing set up a restructuring plan to ensure that its two teams will continue racing even without the team itself. Swan Racing co-owner Anthony Marlowe has merged his ownership of the number 26 with BK Racing, where Cole Witt will continue his role as the driver. Meanwhile, the number 30 team is being sold to Extreme Motorsports, who will switch car numbers to the 44 following this weekend's race. Also, J.J. Ailey will replace Parker Kligerman behind the wheel of the car starting this weekend. Championship contender Ron Hornaday Jr. may be out of a ride after some turmoil at Turner Scott Motorsports. Rumors have been circulating that due to a dispute between co-owners Steve Turner and Harry Scott Jr., the team would shut down. Scott released a statement saying that the number 31 and number 32 teams of Ben Kennedy and Cameron Haley will race this weekend in Canada, while in the Nationwide Series, the number 31 and number 42 teams of Dylan Kwasniewski and Kyle Larson will race at Atlanta. Not in that picture, the number 30 truck and driver Ron Hornaday Jr. Hornaday is currently 4th in the Truck Series points. An update on that story, Harry Scott Jr. will continue to field a Cup team and will now partner with Chip Ganassi in the Xfinity Series. Meanwhile, Scott will no longer partner with Steve Turner. The incident involving Tony Stewart and Kevin Ward Jr. dominated headlines during August and September. Here are 3 of the NASCAR 5 reports on the story. The latest on the Tony Stewart incident, in which Stewart struck and killed Kevin Ward Jr. during a sprint car race. Tony sat out last weekend's NASCAR Cup race at Watkins Glen and has now decided to do the same this weekend at Michigan. Jeff Burton will sub in behind the wheel of the number 14 Chevy. Tony Stewart will return to his driving duties behind the wheel of the number 14 Chevy on Sunday. This will be the first race for Stewart since Pocono earlier this month. Tony is 26th in points and would need a waiver from NASCAR in order to still be eligible for the chase. In the news, the verdict is out. Tony Stewart will not face charges in the death of Kevin Ward Jr., who was fatally struck by Stewart during a sprint car race back in August. The verdict was announced on Wednesday following a grand jury hearing. Ontario County District Attorney Michael Tantillo also stated that, according to toxicology reports, Ward was under the influence of marijuana at the time of his death. In other news, Roush Fenway Racing has made some changes. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Greg Biffle will return to the team as drivers next season. Trevor Bayne, who currently drives full-time in the Nationwide Series for RFR, will move up to full-time in Cup behind the wheel of the number 6 Ford. Mark Martin, who once drove the number 6 car, will return to RFR, but not as a driver, instead as a driver development coach. Meanwhile, Carl Edwards will not return to Roush Fenway Racing next season. In the news, as anticipated, Carl Edwards will drive a 4th car for Joe Gibbs Racing next season. Edwards, who currently drives the number 99 for Roush Fenway Racing, will drive the number 19 for JGR. Also, Eris has signed on as a sponsor for 17 races. Meanwhile, Subway Restaurants is rumored to come on board for some of the other events, but that is just speculation at this time. JGR also announced that Daniel Suarez will drive full-time for the team in the Nationwide Series in 2015. And Wood Brothers Racing has announced that it has formed a technical alliance with Team Penske and that Ryan Blaney will drive the famous number 21 part-time in the Cup Series next season. Blaney is currently a Team Penske development driver, racing for Roger in select nationwide races, and full-time in trucks for Brad Keselowski Racing. In other news, it's back to Australian V8 supercars for Marcos Ambrose. Ambrose, who has driven full-time for Richard Petty Motorsports since 2011, will make the switch from NASCAR back to V8 supercars after the end of this season. Ambrose, who has 2 career NASCAR Cup wins, will race for DJR Team Penske in supercars in 2015. It's time now for a news update. In the news, Sam Hornish Jr. will return to the Cup Series, where he will drive full-time for Richard Petty Motorsports next season. This comes after Marcos Ambrose announced that he will move back to Australia, where he will return to V8 Supercars in 2015. Cornish will drive the number 9 Ford for RPM. This year, Sam has driven part-time for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Nationwide Series, sharing the number 54 ride with Kyle Busch. On Memorial Day, May 25th, Kurt Busch became one of 4 drivers to attempt the double. Busch raced in the Indianapolis 500 on the Sunday afternoon, where he started 12th and finished 6th. Kurt also took home the honors of Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year. Busch then flew to Charlotte, North Carolina to participate in that evening's Cup race, the longest NASCAR event of the year, the Coca-Cola 600. Kurt started 28th before engine issues stopped short his attempt at racing the full 1,100 miles. He finished 40th. Another Kurt Busch headline from later in the year: Busch's ex-girlfriend Patricia Driscoll alleges that Kurt assaulted her in his motorhome during the Dover race weekend. The two split up the week prior. Busch calls Driscoll's allegations a fabrication. The hearing, in which Driscoll is asking for a court order for Busch to stay away from her, will continue in the new year. On Wednesday, NASCAR announced the names of the 2015 class for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Bill Elliott, Fred Lorenzen, Wendell Scott, Joe Weatherly, and Rex White will be the inductees. Amby France will receive the inaugural Landmark Award for outstanding contributions to the sport. The induction ceremony will take place on Friday, January 30th, 2015, with televised coverage on NBC Sports Network. In other news, Terry Labonte will run a special paint scheme this weekend in what may be his final Cup start. The paint scheme on Labonte's number 32 Ford will include a mixture of past designs from Terry's number 92, from which he made his first career start, his number 44, from when he won his first Cup championship, and from his number 5 car, in which he won his second career title. Earlier this year, Labonte said that he intends to retire after the season, in which he is scheduled to race in only the super speedway events. Wendell Scott will be honored later this year at Martinsville. Scott was the first African-American driver to win a Cup Series race. Front Row Motorsports number 34 Cup team with driver David Reagan will race with a throwback paint scheme at Martinsville, reminiscent of the number 34 that Scott drove to victory lane at Jacksonville Speedway in 1963. Kyle Busch Motorsports, meanwhile, will change its number 54 truck to the number 34 for the trucks race at Martinsville. Driver Darrell Wallace Jr. became the first African-American to win a race in one of NASCAR's top 3 series since Scott, when he visited victory lane at the Virginia track in 2013. Other news, buzz about the new race team alliance is heating up. 9 NASCAR teams have joined up in this alliance to try and lower costs as well as create one voice on issues facing the teams. Now RTA Chairman Rob Kaufman, who's also co-owner of Michael Waltrip Racing, says that the RTA has opened teams that have attempted to qualify in 95% of the races over the last couple of years. NASCAR announced that the Race Team Alliance will communicate with the sport's governing body through attorneys. There are 18 members in the Race Team Alliance. Here's a full list of the teams. In other news, there will be Gillilands galore in a Super Late Model Series race at Irwindale Speedway on July 19th. Former NASCAR K&N West Series champion and Cup Series racer Butch Gilliland will compete against his son, current Cup driver David Gilliland, and his grandson, late model driver Todd Gilliland, in the race. That will make it 3 generations of Gillilands facing off in late models at Irwindale Speedway next week. Cup Series driver David Gilliland got outdueled by his father and son in a late model race at Irwindale Speedway. Granted, David did get involved in a wreck, but it was the younger Gilliland, Todd, who finished 3rd, the best of the trio. The elder statesman Butch wasn't far behind, finishing 5th, despite this being his first race since 2002. Jason Pattison won the race. And there's been the Pettys, the Earnhardts, the Allisons, the Busch brothers, and now, how about the Gordons? Jeff Gordon's daughter Ella tested out a quarter midget for the first time this past week. Ella is currently 6 years old, so she still has quite a few years to work her way up to NASCAR, if that is her goal. We'll have to wait and see if the Gordons can be added to the list of racing families. A war of words between Brad Keselowski and former teammate Kurt Busch. The two got involved in a pit road wreck early in Sunday's STP 500, leaving Keselowski with damage that sent his number 2 Team Penske Ford behind the wall, while Kurt worked his way up to the front of the field and won the race. After the incident, Brad commented, quote, "If you're going to be aggressive, wreck yourself, don't wreck me," end quote. Keselowski went on to say, "I'll remember that when it's lap 50 and he needs a break," end quote. Meanwhile, Kurt commented, quote, "Yeah, I can't believe he overreacted and he's as upset as he is," end quote. Busch then went on to talk about the incident and in-race battle before adding, quote, "He will get what he gets back when I decide to give it back," end quote. And those are Kurt's exact words. Tempers were flaring at the short track of Richmond International Raceway following the Cup race on Saturday night. Marcos Ambrose and Casey Mears exchanged shoves and punches, which were seen live on Fox. The reason for the fight is unknown, but NASCAR penalized both drivers for actions detrimental to stock car racing and a behavioral penalty. Ambrose has been fined $25,000, while Mears has been fined $15,000. Both drivers will remain under NASCAR probation until May 28th. In the news, penalties have been issued after tempers were flaring Saturday night at Charlotte. Confrontation started on the cooldown laps when Denny Hamlin deliberately slowed down in front of Brad Keselowski before Keselowski attempted to spin out Hamlin's number 11 Toyota. Matt Kenseth and Tony Stewart were also involved in the post-race craziness, which concluded after Kenseth ran up and grabbed Keselowski while he was walking between two haulers. The incident broadcast live on ABC. For the complete rundown on the Saturday Night Fights NASCAR edition, be sure to check out my post-race article at carnuts.ca. Meanwhile, NASCAR issued penalties. Brad Keselowski has been fined $50,000. Tony Stewart has been fined $25,000. Both drivers have been placed on NASCAR probation for the next 4 Cup races. Last weekend at Texas, tempers were flaring. Green-white checkered, Brad Keselowski ran into Jeff Gordon as the two drivers raced close on a restart. As a result of the contact, a flat tire on Gordon's car, sending Jeff to a 29th place finish. Jeff was on the outside of row 1 on the restart. Following the race, Jeff confronted Brad, who then started to walk away. Brad was shoved by Kevin Harvick before being grabbed by Jeff, which started a brawl between the 24 and 2 teams. Some sad news now. 2 of NASCAR's popular racing families experienced losses this week. Robert Lynn Bobby Waltrip, the middle brother of Darrell and Michael Waltrip, passed away on Sunday. Although he didn't follow his brothers into NASCAR, Bobby still experienced success in go-kart racing in the World and American Karting Associations. According to NBC Sports, Bobby was believed to be in his early 60s at the time of his death. And Linda Gale Owens Petty passed away on Tuesday at age 72 after a long battle with cancer. Linda is known for helping start the Racing Wives Auxiliary. She is survived by her husband Richard Petty, as well as her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Richard Petty Motorsports handed out commemorative decals to teams who may place the decals on their cars if they choose. NASCAR 5 would like to send its condolences to the Waltrip and Petty families. Patricia Petty, Maurice Petty's wife, passed away on Sunday. This came after Maurice's brother Richard Petty faced a similar loss 6 weeks ago with his wife Linda when his wife Linda passed away. NASCAR 5 would like to send its condolences to the Petty family. And legendary team owner Junie Dunlavey passed away at the age of 90. Dunlavey fielded cars from the 1950s into the 2000s. His famous number 90 car has taken 3 drivers to Rookie of the Year titles. Hendrick Motorsports will honor Dunlavey with a special decal that will be placed on all 4 of the team's cars this weekend at Michigan. NASCAR 5 would like to send its condolences to Junie Dunlavey's family and friends. Bobby, Linda, Patricia, and Junie weren't the only members of the NASCAR community who passed away this year. NASCAR 5 would like to send its condolences to the family and friends of all those who were lost in 2014. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon were among the drivers atop the standings early in the year. It was Gordon who led throughout the majority of the season, while Team Penske drivers led for most of the chase. But it was Kevin Harvick who was atop the points when it counted, using the new chase format to his advantage to win the championship. Had there been no chase for the Sprint Cup, Jeff Gordon would have won this year's title. Brad Keselowski won the most races this season with 6. Kevin Harvick and Joey Logano weren't far behind with 5 wins each. Teammates Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Jimmy Johnson each visited victory lane 4 times. Carl Edwards won 2 races, while those with the single race victory in 2014 were Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, AJ Allmendinger, Casey Kane, and Eric Almirola. As we have looked back to 2014, we also look ahead to 2015. Changes to the schedule, competition packages, and Xfinity and Truck Series are a few of the headlines heading into this upcoming year. And let's not forget driver changes, including those that you saw earlier on today's show. Be sure to tune in to the 2015 NASCAR 5 preview show on Saturday, February 7th here on my YouTube channel. Meanwhile, thanks for watching the 2014 Year in Review edition of NASCAR 5. I'm Bryce Turner. For the latest off-season news, visit carnus.ca and click on Closed Wheel Racing. And be sure to follow me on and NASCAR 5 on Twitter at BryceT24 and at NASCAR5. Also, feel free to email bryceturnermedia@yahoo.ca and visit bryceturner.wix.com/home. Thanks again for watching. Have a happy new year.